So, how many people here have uploaded a YouTube video of themselves doing something embarrassing? See, at least one person has the balls to say so. So Barbara Drescher is going to talk about things like such thing. Like that video she was just telling me is all stuff she found on YouTube and spliced together. So that craziness you saw, that's how crazy people are. And she's going to tell you why, right?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. You know, whenever you ask a psychologist a question, that's usually the answer. We don't quite know, but we'll tell you what we know. Okay. Hi, thanks for coming. So we're going to be talking about self-esteem, obviously. And if you've ever seen me talk on the subject in the past, you know there's some fun stuff coming and probably some dark, ugly stuff coming too. Yay for dark, ugly stuff. Yeah. The best way to demonstrate some of the things I'm going to be talking about is to show you clips from reality TV shows. So yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of that, but if it's okay, you can make fun of them, because that's why I'm showing them to you. So I've got a few of those for you, and let's just go ahead and dive in. So we're inundated with messages about self-esteem in our culture all the time, right? These are these little badges, these little square things, are things that you can put on your MySpace page or your Facebook page or whatever. They're little stamps things. And then what you see there is a clip of somebody who actually sells classes and counseling on how to improve your self-esteem. And we don't just encourage, or we don't just think this is okay, we encourage it. We actually encourage high self-esteem. We promote it, we reward it. These are also little badges you can put on your Facebook page. This is a search of self-esteem and kids, self-esteem boosters for kids. So there's all these websites that tell you how to raise self-esteem in kids. In fact, there are websites that have songs that you can buy. Yeah, oops, sorry. I'm going to switch back and forth here. Come on. Like these.
I'm terrific, I'm the number one best. I'm terrific, I'm as good as the rest. So when I look into the mirror, what do I see? It's the nicest, sweetest, kindest kid that ever could be.
There's another one. I can't not play this one for you. I just can't, because it just kills me. And it's got this really long lead in, sorry, before it gets to the meat.
I am a champion of blue ribbon gold medal kid. I am a champion of blue ribbon.
Oh, yeah, you didn't need to hear the rest of that. We even have PSAs. We have PSAs about this stuff. It's
You
a
may
little
not
old,
realize
but
but everyone is born with their one true love, themselves. If you like you, everyone else will too.
okay. Knowing it is half the battle. I like that. Okay. Okay. People mean well, right? We really thought that high self-esteem was your ticket to better academic performance, success, likability, persistence, happiness. And we thought that high self-esteem would reduce bullying and violence and things like that. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm going to tell you most of that stuff is just not true. In fact, all of our efforts to raise people's self-esteem really led to a culture of narcissism. I absolutely love this one. That is a cake. That is a wedding cake made to look exactly like the bride. Ow! Ouch! Oh, okay. If you guys in the back didn't hear that, he said it looks better than the bride. I don't know about that. But I promised you some videos. So let's meet my favorite bridezilla. Karen. Now, Karen is so special that they actually told her story over 3 episodes. And this is just a tiny, I'm telling you, it's a tiny portion of it. I've actually got a few videos of her, but I'm still only telling part of it.
Big and flashy and, oh my God, it's just humongous. It's like a car. I named her. Her name is Edna, may I add. Her name is Edna. You know why? Because Edna is like a fat person's name. And this ring is really fat. I know thinking is a waste of time. Thinking is for people who have no brains. I'm highly intelligent, okay? I don't want to look like a poodle. I don't want to look like a ballerina. I don't want to look like a prom queen. I want to look, awesome because I am awesome. Hello? Sharing up. What? Hi. Minimum wage and probably doesn't have a man in her life and is depressed, I would greatly appreciate it. And a male.
And I would like a male. For some reason, every woman that we got don't know what they're doing.
Females are jealous of my hair and they want to make me look horrible. Daddy, don't you understand? I'm not a normal looking girl. I'm absolutely stunning. It's the truth. I care about me. That's all I care about is me. Okay. Me. I don't care about anything else.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. I wish I could say this was a parody, but it's not. It's not. All right. So before I get into all of this stuff, I do want to. There's a little caveat. Some facts about very low self-esteem. Very low self-esteem can be something dangerous. It's not something that you want to. I'm not encouraging people to not have high self-esteem. It makes people vulnerable to depression and eating disorders. It makes you vulnerable to bullying and to abuse. People with very low self-esteem lack self-trust, and that's important because if you lack self-trust, you're not going to take risks, you're not going to challenge yourself. So very low self-esteem is bad, okay? But very high self-esteem can be bad too if it's not really high self-esteem, if it's something we call narcissism. So where does that come from? Well, messages like this. So this is a cat. It's not a lion. It can never, ever be a lion. It can only pretend to be a lion, okay? Self-esteem doesn't come from inflated, unrealistic views of the self. It doesn't come from unrealistic views of the self, not inflated, unrealistic views. It cannot be a lion. It's just not. It's not right. So narcissism involves unrealistic views of the self. It involves entitlement. All of these are components to in different levels, in different people. So just because somebody doesn't feel entitled, entitlement tends to be very highly correlated with narcissism, but it's not a perfect correlation. They tend to focus on or overvalue physical appearance. Not all narcissists do, but that tends to be a trend. They focus on possessions, on status, and on fame. And these are things that they value. Okay. In comparison to others, if you look at the difference between self-esteem and narcissism, people with high self-esteem, when they're compared with themselves to others, they actually think they're more attractive, they think they're more competent, but they also think they're more loving and more moral. People high in narcissism tend to rate themselves as more attractive, more competent, and more important than other people. Okay? Really the key difference between someone with high self-esteem and someone with high narcissism is how they regard others. Okay? It's narcissists have a tendency to regard others either neutrally or negatively. Okay, they may say they care about other people. They may talk a lot about liberal values and important, they may actually be activists even for social change and things like that and pro-social causes. But they tend to speak about others in terms that relate to themselves. They tend to value others based on what those people have to offer them, on how much those people support and help them and how little those people criticize them. And we'll get back to criticism a little bit later. And just to illustrate, let's watch Karen again because she's so much fun. I would like you to see how Karen treats other people because these are kind of typical of highly narcissistic people.
By a street vendor.
I'm not following what's going on here.
And even when the street vendor tries to compliment her on her upcoming nuptials, Karen cops a completely unnecessary attitude.
I hope the marriage goes.
It will. Do you see my ring?
I see the ring.
Good, exactly.
I see the
You
ring.
could dream about it, because you'll be able to afford it on your $9 an hour.
Money ain't gonna buy love. Girl,
Stop,
you're gonna
stop.
go have sex with other girls.
Help
See, what
me?
rich guys do is they put a
Rich guys don't stand on the side of the street with a Gucci bag, okay? I'm poor. I'm standing on the side of the road because I make $9 an hour. And then on my side job, I clean the floors at McDonald's. Oh my God. And then I go back to my house in the projects. I'm not waiting online. Somebody better let me in right now. I'm not standing outside. I'm gonna get sick, honestly. What's the problem?
I need a credit card and ID for the table, and I need you to take all the bachelorette stuff off.
Are you serious? I'm not going in here. Okay, then where do you want? Where's Amanda? I'm not taking off my bachelorette. That's the whole point.
Don't lose your mind in front of me, because I don't give a about it.
Listen to me, you $9 an hour human being. Go inside with your fake fur, honestly. Don't talk to me like that. You don't know me from a hole in the wall.
Get back in your cheap ass limo.
Cheap ass limo? Honey, my ring is $100,000. What are you doing with your pink? Honestly, it's a joke. It's a joke. I don't want to deal with him. He's trash. I want to deal with somebody normal. Is there like a manager that's classy? Honestly. Do you hear what says relax? Take off your bachelorette.
Relax, baby.
He told me to take off my bachelorette.
Where do you want to go?
I'm not gonna apologize to a doorman. Are you out of your mind?
Well, so we'll all have a miserable night.
Go inside. I'm not gonna go inside. I'm not. Tana, if you let me apologize to a doorman, I'll never talk to you again. I'm not apologizing to a doorman. Are you freaking kidding me?
For you?
Are you crazy? I would never let you do that. I'm not apologizing to a doorman. I'm gonna apologize to a simple, like, I don't even have words for this man. Like, a doorman. I'm gonna apologize to a doorman. Honestly, I'm gonna apologize to a doorman. It's a joke.
So what do you want to do tonight?
I don't care. I'm not apologizing to a doorman. There'll be a cold day in hell when I apologize to a doorman.
Oh, you don't want to get me started on her bridesmaids. Just watch the show. Yeah, they're just as bad. It's pretty bad. That's probably one we want to take offline. Because you would think that narcissistic people wouldn't get along very well, and they do and they don't. It depends. It depends on what they're offering each other. It's really, what do you get out of it? What they get out of it is being on television by following her around for a week before her wedding while Bridezilla is filming, you know. And yeah, they're very similar to her. So yeah, that's really the key difference is the point here is how, you notice for Karen, it's specifically people she sees beneath her are huge targets, okay? And it's the regard for others. It's either neutral or negative. So how do we get there? Well, part of the problem is we have these self-esteem programs that emphasize individuality, you know, unique snowflakes. I'm very special, I'm myself, you know. It's unconditional is what it is. Unconditional self-adoration and uniqueness rather than self-confidence and empathy. Okay. When everybody gets a trophy, self-esteem suffers. Because self-esteem comes from accomplishments. In a very real sense, you can't really give someone self-esteem. It's something they kind of have to earn on their own. What you can do is you can encourage kids, if you're trying to raise it in kids, you can encourage them to do things that they're good at, that they're going to get rewarded for, to go out, put themselves out there and take risks, learn that you can't always be number one, but that sometimes you can actually be recognized for what you do that's good. And it's those things, those real accomplishments that make someone's self-esteem solid. Unearned praise, though, has a problem. It has it prompts different responses. It can prompt entitlement attitudes and dispositions. It can also prompt something we call in psychology imposter syndrome. which everybody's felt at some point probably, especially when you're a teenager. It's that fear of demonstrating unworthiness. If you're constantly being told that you're great, how might it bother you, or how much anxiety might that create for you to live up to that? If you don't feel that you've earned it, because it doesn't come from accomplishments, it comes from praise. So in many ways, all of our well-meaning attempts to raise self-esteem can actually do the opposite. So good self-esteem, high self-esteem is good game, and narcissism is in your face. Yeah. So let's talk about some myths. This is Paris Hilton, of course, with the Paris Hilton honor on her. And there was a popular view for a long time that narcissists were really people who have low self-esteem. If you've ever seen some of those psychologists on TV talking about how they really need to love themselves more. Well, I'm going to let you decide for yourself if that's what they need. This is a movie that Lindsay Lohan had made a couple of years ago. Yeah, I'm not going to make you watch all of it because there's a good 2 minutes of her just doing that, coming out of swimming pools and looking longingly at the camera. And that's the entire film. So, really compensating for low self-esteem? Yeah, not so much. It's sad, I know. But she was. She was cute. She was a good actress, too. So another myth about self-esteem. A lot of people will say, well, don't people with narcissistic, personality disorders, don't a lot of them have a good reason to be narcissistic? They're actually better than us, and they're better looking. And research has actually tested that hypothesis, and it turns out not to be true. People who are highly narcissistic are not better looking. They're not better at anything than people without high narcissism, to put it that way. So you don't need to be narcissistic to be great. This is one that a lot of people have a tough time swallowing. Most teens are at risk for low self-esteem. That's actually not true. We all think back to the times in our teen years when we were insecure and we felt, unworthy, and that may be a rite of passage. But the truth of the matter is, at least today, most teens are pretty satisfied with themselves. In fact, 3 out of 4 high school seniors in 2000, this survey was done in 2006, I imagine it's probably even higher now, are satisfied with themselves. They rate themselves as being satisfied with themselves. And 1 out of 3 are completely satisfied. So even just below that with, I would like to change some things about myself, there's really only about 3 out of 10. So kids actually tend to be fairly high in self-esteem in general. High self-esteem results in higher performance in professional and other domains. This is one of the reasons for the push to raise self-esteem, is we thought that people needed high self-esteem to be successful. And the truth is that it may help in some professions to be very self-confident. You don't have to be narcissistic, but it may help in some professions like acting and so forth. But it also, there's a lot of research on things like CEOs and how narcissistic they are and so forth. You have to remember that because somebody has a success does not necessarily mean that they had a success because they were competent. Sometimes they just got lucky or they took a lot of risks. Narcissism leads to more risk-taking because someone is overconfident. And so what happens is some of those risks pay off and some of them don't, especially with something like a CEO. Somebody might be CEO for 3 or 4 years and then things change. The company changes, the economy changes, and they're not as successful as they once were. They were lucky once. In the long run, narcissism's bad for everybody, including the narcissist. But even more important, high self-esteem results in better academic performance is a myth. And there's a lot of research on this. In fact, academic performance has gone down in the last 3 decades while self-esteem has risen. In higher education, narcissists are more likely to drop out of college and their grades decline over time. In one study, those who failed an introductory course were the highest in narcissism. They had the highest narcissism scores. And those who earned A's had the lowest. Several studies show that providing self-esteem boosts to students, these are daily boosts, actually lowers performance. What you see on the left here is the self-esteem scores of people who were given daily boosts. So the daily boost actually, we call this a manipulation check. The manipulation worked. It did raise their self-esteem. So they're higher in self-esteem. Unfortunately, though, their performance dropped. So they were, on the first exam, they were right there with the control group. And then as they got daily boosts throughout the semester, on the final exam, their scores were significantly lower. And there's a good reason for this. This is something I call the cycle of incompetence. A student of mine and I, and actually a colleague, were very interested in this topic. One of the things that we noticed was that some of our students that had high entitlement attitudes also seemed to be following some of the worst study strategies. Study strategies, especially in upper division classes, that encourage things like memorization, memorizing bullet points, or using flashcards and things like that, are not very effective in upper division classes where you're having to integrate and understand, have deep understanding of material. And they tend not to read and, things like that. So we did some research. We actually had several measures. We measured narcissism, we measured academic entitlement, we measured something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is how overconfident you are in your performance on something. We measured superiority. And we measured how the study strategies that they chose to use. And what we found is that narcissism was correlated with, of course, entitlement, and also correlated with the study strategies that they used, just as we predicted. They tended to use poor study strategies like flashcards and memorization. And then when they performed, one of the key things that we measured was attributions for academic success. So what did they decide was the reason for a success or failure? So what we found is that they tended to use these poor study strategies. Then they would get a poor grade on a test, and they would attribute that poor grade to outside forces, things that were external to themselves and not to effort. And also attribute good scores to outside effort, things that were luck or but not effort. And so they didn't see that they had any reason to change their study strategies. And so they kept studying the same way, which means that you don't learn. And so you have more bad performance. And that bad performance then leads to another external attribution. And instead of internalizing the criticism and actually changing the way they did something so that they could learn and grow. So we call this the cycle of incompetence, because you start out incompetent, you don't know you're incompetent, and in your feedback you get, you don't attribute to incompetence, you attribute it to the teacher hated me or I didn't have time to study. And so you don't make any changes, and so you just perpetuate the incompetence. So this can be really bad. And then off that went to the next myth. You must love yourself before you can love someone else. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to say that right out. This is ridiculous. People with low self-esteem are vulnerable to victimization, like I said before, and abuse from others, but they are not necessarily unloved, okay? You can be loved even if you don't feel that great about yourself. I'm not saying you should feel bad about yourself. I'm just saying it doesn't make you unlovable, because, wow, that would be really bad. I hate myself, so everybody hates me. Okay. And then there's if you like you, others will like you too. Well, there's the flip side of that too. Research shows that while highly narcissistic people are initially very well liked because they tend to be outgoing and charismatic, especially when they're working in groups, that changes very, very quickly. Okay, initially they might be the most popular person in the group, and then everybody hates them down the road, probably because they want to be controlling or slack off and not do the work. They just want to take the credit for it, things like that. And this makes sense because in relationships, people with low self-esteem can be clingy and secure, but they may genuinely love you. A narcissist is more interested in themselves than in you. Okay. But the most important one, and the one I'm probably going to focus most on for the rest of the talk, is it's actually a combination of two. This idea that aggression is a product of low self-esteem and that bullies are compensating for low self-esteem. This is probably the most dangerous myth that we have. It's not true. That's why I called it a myth, obviously. And there's a lot of excellent research on this. Self-esteem alone does not even affect aggression. It's not even related. It's not inversely related. Aggression's most likely to occur in somebody with an unstable, what we call an unstable high self-esteem, when their ego is threatened. In other words, when they're criticized. And aggression is usually only toward the source of the threat. This doesn't mean that the aggressor is insecure. Okay? It doesn't mean that unstable doesn't necessarily mean that they're insecure or that they're not sure that they're as great as they think they are. It may be that they're certain of their self-worth, but they just can't tolerate other people not seeing it. Okay? Many bullies think very highly of themselves. They like being looked up to, and they often expect other people to behave according to their wishes. Bullies bully because they can. And this is so important, I'm just going to put it up there. Bullies feel genuinely superior to others, and they feel entitled to what they do. And this is so important. Because of this myth, we have these anti-bullying campaigns that tend to promote self-esteem. That actually makes the situation worse, okay? Because narcissism is a cause for most of what high self-esteem programs were designed to prevent: aggression, poor academic performance, anti-intellectualism, materialism, lack of caring, empathy for others, shallow values, those things. You don't have to read all the text. So let's take a look at what happens when a narcissistic person doesn't get what they want. And I like toddlers and tiaras for this.
I did actually get taken out of a pageant once. I lost, so I got mad, and the judge was right in front of me, so I kicked him in the chest.
Who said what about that?
You said, are you beautiful? And I said, and I was almost gonna say, she's thinking I'm not beautiful, and I am always beautiful. Get away from me! If I don't win this pageant, I will trash the hotel room.
No!
Danielle, steal that.
Oh.
I think it's really not fair that a baby won $1,000 and it can't even sing or dance or do nothing but poop and pee.
Tired.
Why did you want to pick from me? No, I wanted to win.
Hey, baby, you did amazing.
That didn't come back.
Ava.
Okay, by the way, all of these toddlers, all these tantrums, and there are so many that I cut out, you have no idea. I could do this for hours. These are all kids who, almost all of them are kids that won like the second highest crown. The second highest crown. They didn't win the ultimate, and that's why they're having a tantrum. So you're thinking to yourself, I know, you're thinking to yourself, well, these are just little kids, right? Well, let's see what happens when their mothers don't get what they want.
Their very first pageant, Cassidy did not win queen. She won princess. And I stormed out, huffy puffy, tossed the crown in the parking lot and ran it over.
I want to go home. I don't want to continue.
Let's finish because she does such a good job.
Everything she did on purpose. Everything.
That's all right. If
No.
that's what it is, that's what it is.
No.
Just go out there and do her two things.
No.
Please.
They hate her. They hate her. And I let hate her. I tell you, we're not going. That's it. I don't want it.
I don't care. Let's go.
Okay, just leave me alone.
Let's all do it.
No.
I'm taking this stuff down.
Where's Mia?
What did I get?
You got queen.
It is me.
It's okay.
There's no way. There's just no way. We're done. Let's go.
Why are you so mad?
I'm not mad. I'm just ready to leave.
I don't feel like wasting my time at this pageant any longer, and I should have just stayed home.
Shut the front door.
Joking, keep this.
She got princess. It's a joke. This is a joke. Joke.
Because if we were in Vegas and not on the other side of the United States, I would have taken her neck, put my hand around her neck like this, and then like the back of her hair, like I would have like twisted the back of that like super tight and dragged her the out of there and beat her ass. Trust me, I've done it before.
Okay, so why does this happen? Well, oh no. You're going to see some examples of men too. This has nothing to do with hormones. This has something to do with. How many of you have heard of something called cognitive dissonance? Okay, so this graphic might look familiar. This is not exactly about cognitive dissonance, but it's very, very similar to cognitive dissonance. The idea of cognitive dissonance is that you have an attitude and a behavior, or two different attitudes, and they're actually in tension with one another. They conflict with one another, and they're different, they're separate. And what we do as human beings, we all have this, we all experience this. It's what we do with it that matters. What we do with that is try to reduce that dissonance. We try to reduce that uncomfortable feeling of having inconsistent views. And we do that a number of ways. We justify things that we do. We dismiss, things. We change the attitude and we change the behavior. This is very similar. You have a self-concept. You have a concept of the self. And we're constantly being bombarded with feedback on that self-concept. Some of that feedback is positive. Some of it's unrealistic in a positive way. Some of it's unrealistic in a negative way. But there's a lot of inconsistency, and what you do with that inconsistency is what matters. If that creates dissonance, then you want to resolve that dissonance. And there are ways to do that. You can change the self-concept. You can take the criticism, and you can accept it, and you can improve and do better. You can realize, you know what, maybe I wasn't as good as I thought, or maybe there are other people out there. Maybe I'm great, but there are other people out there who are better. With the toddlers and tiaras situation, you've got competitions where there can only be one ultimate queen, supreme, whatever. They have a million titles to do that, to make sure they have the ultimate. There can only be one of those. Maybe you are beautiful. Maybe you're stunning, but maybe there's one girl who's just a little bit prettier, right? There are other ways to reduce that. You can try to change the input. My favorite example of that are things like American Idol auditions. And hopefully if we have time, I'll show you one of those. If you ever watch the auditions, you see a lot of people who are really, really bad at singing, but think they're great at it. And as soon as the judges say, I'm sorry, it wasn't that good, what do? They keep singing, as if they're going to hit that one note that's going to change their minds. But remember, there's a problem with this. The problem with this is that narcissism does not come from accomplishments. It doesn't come from real accomplishments. So what you see is a lot of highly narcissistic people who have a padded resume, a lot of honorable mentions and things like that, and not a lot of ways to show that they should get the treatment they deserve. So there's a difference between that self-concept and the input that you're getting from others, either in terms of feedback and the way the world's treating you, or in terms of criticism. Another way to do that is to try to change the perception of the input. So what you'll see is people dismissing criticism as something else, like they're just being mean, or it's driven by something else. They just hate women, they're jealous. I love that one. And trying to prove they're worthy, to change the way that others treat them. This is particularly difficult for them. So in some extreme cases, a narcissist may become frustrated and lash out verbally or physically, and that's what you see. People who are highly narcissistic are more likely to lash out, and they're more likely to lash out aggressively. And let's see what Karen does, because I just love Karen and don't at the same time. Let's see what Karen does when she doesn't get what she wants.
Can somebody get us a pen?
Yeah.
Is there a pen on the table?
Yes. Very patient man.
I cannot believe it's so complicated to get a pen. There's not a pen in this house. It's just a pen. Just get a pen. Make a pen. Get a pen or I'm cutting blood and I'm starting to write in blood. I can't believe the whole house is running up and down for a pen. A pen. A pen. The poor people have pens in their house. What the hell is that?
That'll be taken care of. Come on. It's not ripped or anything. It's a thread.
The snag may just be an errant thread, but there's still the stain to contend with.
The dress is filthy.
Excellent.
No way.
Okay, we'll clean it.
My wedding gown, the most important part of the evening, it has been butchered by a retard. A brainless retard. It's not the end of the world. The dress looks beautiful. Just that will come out.
Shut up. Stop.
Because why you're not gonna have my back. I have your back. But I have your back. If it was your wedding gown, you'd been flipping out. You should shut the up.
Hey.
There's a rip in my dress. Shut it off.
Hey.
You better not be talking either.
What is this?
Because I will go over there. You better not be talking You better not be talking either. Honestly, because my dress is dirty, you're sitting there and telling me it's not. You're sitting there telling me it's not. You're blind. What's wrong with you?
No.
Don't make me have to be like a psycho. Come look when she cleaned the floor of my dress. Come look. Then don't open your mouth. She's disgusting. She's telling me she didn't dirty the dress. It's a joke. That lady is a joke. This woman came highly recommended by people that have designer dresses and just people that, are upscale people. And this is the kind of that I deal with.
This was yesterday. The push-up
This cup, excuse me, but that fits a D cup.
Stop being a bitch, okay?
Excuse me?
You are not.
Selfie! I'm an hour and a half away from my party. Serious? Getting dresses. Shut up! You're a bitch! Shut up! You shut up! Shut up! Your mother ruined my 70th birthday!
It's like the Jerry Springer show.
Please, you won't tell me what my wedding gown is! They stole my wedding gown!
Give me the one. Stop it. Give me the one.
They took my gown!
No, she did not take the gown. She didn't take the gown. It went out for cleaning, and she wasn't supposed to pick it up that day. So, yeah, it's. Does she have high blood pressure? I don't know. She certainly has enough tantrums. It's a tantrum. Oh, that was her father in the shot. You didn't actually see her fiance in those clips. He's a very patient man. Who knows? Marry her for the insurance money. Okay. I really like this quote because it illustrates how internet aggression. How the internet actually feeds aggression. The internet can much more easily provide a false sense of importance and an overestimate of contributions to society, as well as bolstering the false sense of self-esteem. When their self-esteem is threatened, they go on the attack, and such attacks will include threats of harm, vilifications of anyone who commits the offense of either ignoring them or criticizing them. That's a quote by Liz Cornwell in her TAM talk a couple of years ago. So the internet doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help, but it's not just the internet. Keep in mind that narcissistic people tend to overvalue materialism, money, fame, notoriety, and attention. And here's where it gets really dark. So narcissistic people tend to lash out at only those that they feel have wronged them. But what happens when you think the whole world has wronged you? Y'all probably remember Elliot Rodger. Okay. He clearly felt that the world should have treated him better. He did all sorts of things to try to prove his worth, too. Remember when I said they may try to prove their worth? It's one way to reduce the dissonance, right? He bought hundreds of dollars worth of lottery tickets because he thought that if he just had enough money, it would get him what he wanted. Then when he couldn't resolve it, he lashed out violently. If we look at single-person shooters, we can see a pattern here. This is Robert Hawkins, who killed himself and 8 strangers. He wounded 4 people in a mall in Nebraska in 2007. And one of the notes he left for his friend said, "Just think, though, I'm going to be fucking famous." If you look at the Columbine shooters, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, they debated about who would direct the movie of their story. Harris made several statements that are very similar to items on the MPI. The MPI is called it's the narcissistic personality disorder, so it measures narcissistic personality inventory. It measures levels of the personality trait narcissism. So we're not necessarily talking about even clinical levels of narcissism. Narcissism runs on a continuum, and we can measure how much, on that continuum. Some of the things he said, "Isn't it fun to get the respect we're going to deserve?" There's an item on the MPI that says, "I insist upon getting the respect that is due me." I could convince them that I'm going to climb Mount Everest, or I have a twin brother growing out of my back. I can make you believe anything. There's an item on the MPI that says I can make anyone believe anything I want them to. So several of his statements match up very, very nicely. It's clear from the analysis of what happened there that these were not kids that had just low self-esteem. They were narcissistic. And then there's this guy. And I think this is kind of self-explanatory because this is, if you don't remember, this is Anders I don't know how to pronounce his name, Breivik, the man who shot dozens of people on an island, the Norway shooter. And these are things that he posted to the internet before he went on his rampage. He was never in the military. These are things that he created. These are costumes that he created, took the pictures, posted them to the internet. There's clearly some clinical problems there. And I promised you if we had time, I would show you Lamar. So I'm going to hold that to the end, though. So narcissism has been on the rise since the 70s. It's become a cultural problem. Self-esteem has increased dramatically in the last 3 to 4 decades, and as has narcissism. So some little tidbits of, little statistics here. More than 80% of college students in 2001 scored higher in general self-esteem than the average 1960s student. Also in 2001, 93% of tweens scored higher than the average 1980 tween. In 2006, 80% of middle schoolers scored higher in self-esteem than the average in 1988. Students' self-report of many abilities, including writing, have increased dramatically in the last 30 years. Yet SAT scores have actually dropped in this country. Writing ability is dropped even more than the perception of increase has gone up. Among high school students, high school seniors, there's longitudinal data about high school seniors over the last 30 years. Goals related to extrinsic values like money and fame have become more important. Intrinsic values like community affiliation have become less important. And contrary to popular belief, I've heard many people say this generation is more civic-minded. That's, civic orientation is interest in social problems, taking action to help the environment, save energy, things like that. It's actually declined in the last 40 years. So it's a bit of a myth that this younger generation is more civic-minded. They're actually not. Community service has increased. Does anyone know why community service has increased? It's required now, yeah. It's required in high schools all over the country. So it's become something that we actually force kids to do instead of encourage them to do. Only 25% of new high school graduates who took the ACT in 2011 actually demonstrated college readiness. Of course, there's a little artifact in there that we encourage everybody to go to college, so we have more people actually taking the test. So, but honestly, 25%, that's not good. This is a graph of the percentage of high school seniors who predicted being very good in the future as a spouse, a parent, a worker. We have data from 1975 and data from 2006. Of course, the 1975 is in blue, 2006 is in the red. Among adults, narcissism has increased because this is a cultural problem. Retractions in science and scientific journals related to fraud showed a more than 7-fold increase just in 5 years between 2004 and 2009, exceeding a 2-fold rise in retractions related to mere error. And that's according to an analysis published in the Journal of Medical Ethics. Fraud made up nearly 27% of the retractions. Retractions are meant to correct mistakes, not fraud. It's not self-esteem. I attribute it to narcissism. Can we save the Q&A for after, please? Okay. Individualism is increased by many measures. We've got lots of research showing that even in pop culture, things like songs and in books and things like that, we use words like I and me a lot more than we and us. And you also is an individualistic word. And as individualism and narcissism increase, here's a little graph of how narcissism has increased over the years. Empathy, trust, and close personal connections decrease. And I see that as a problem. I think that's a serious problem. So since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to show you one last video. This is Lamar. Now, this is actually... American Idol auditions are just a treasure trove of these things. And I could show you many of them that follow a very similar pattern, but Lamar shows it almost, textbook. So I'm really just going to show you one, and you can generalize to a lot of others.
But our next contestant wasn't just thinking about Hollywood. He had someone special looming in his head.
Oh wow, I'm very excited about performing in front of Mary J. Blige. She's an idol herself. She's just this big superstar, and I really want to meet her. Today, no matter what the judges say, I will respect their opinion, and I love taking constructive criticism, and that's what I plan to do.
Baby, I could pay you to a kiss from a rose on the grave.
Randy.
Lamar, man, I got mad love for you, man, but that was kind of torturous, man. I mean, the pitch was all over the place. It was like, I don't
do another song for you?
It wasn't great. There's a voice in there somewhere. You need to do a lot of work. I don't even know if you're really for this level. No, dog. Don't sing anything else, dog. Listen, I asked if you were a good listener, and you keep singing.
I am, because
Lamar, let me tell you something. Lamar, let me give you one little bit of advice. Okay? Lamar, hold on.
I want to just share something with you. You have to find some humility in order to do this and pull back and stop trying to exalt yourself. Yeah. And that's what you're doing. You're running. So just
you need to do the work, sweetheart. You haven't done the work yet. So let's take a vote.
Lamar, no. I'm gonna say no because you're not ready yet, dog. I feel your passion, but see, you're not even listening.
Baby, I could pay you to a kiss from
Dog, what are you doing, dog?
Lamar, we're trying to help you.
I don't understand. I really don't understand.
Lamar, listen.
Y'all telling me basically I can't sing.
No, we said you have.
Nobody said you couldn't
Nobody
sing.
said that. Nobody
person
said that. It wasn't great today, dog. You're not ready for this level. We're trying to find the best.
Yes.
We're trying to find the best. You want the best.
We're trying to help you here, honey. We're not trying to hurt you.
This is crazy.
Honey, right off the bat.
Work on that vibrato, dog.
Oh,
really?
That is not
I love you.
That is not cool.
Just the whole damn American Idol show, Mary J. Blige, all that can't sing neither. She can't sing a lick.
Look, I started ducking because I didn't know what he was. I started acting like, oh, what? Because I didn't know if he was going to pull out a gun or what.
Now, who the is Kara? Who the is she? I ain't never heard of that. I wish Paula was here.
Randy, I thought you were going to get up and...
I started getting my duck ready.
I got my duck ready.
Mary J. Blige said, I can't sing. That can't sing a lick.
He's crazy, man.
Get my duck on.
Mary, that boy's crazy right there. That boy's crazy right there.
Looking for a clown. That's what you're looking for. Oh, look, this whole American Idol thing ain't la 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 la. Yo.
you go. Okay, so I'll leave it with Lamar. And we've got about 10 minutes if you guys have questions, you want to come up to the mic. We can have a conversation about academic fraud if you want. Yes.
Hi. I don't know the author, and I apologize for not being able to cite this, but I recently read an article written from the perspective of another journalist like me who was talking about procrastination among writers. And she was talking about, I don't know if you guys read it, but she basically went into this long sort of introspective look at why people procrastinate and why writers specifically are prone to procrastination. And she incorporated the imposter syndrome, and she basically came up with this theory that I don't think she sourced with anything, but just her personal way of looking at the world. That people who procrastinate do it so that they won't have to face the possibility of failure, and then when they if it turns out that they failed in this thing that they're procrastinating about, they can just blame the procrastination and not they don't have to blame their own talent. Does that make sense?
I think there's probably a component of that in there. I mean, I would hesitate to blame all of procrastination on that one thing, but certainly there is a component. There are great examples of people who say choke in the Olympics. They do great in national competitions and even international competitions, and then they go to the Olympics and they choke. And I think a lot of that can come from a fear of success, because with success comes the expectation that you're going to do it again and you're going to keep doing it.
Are there any sort of statistics on the difference between, I guess, self-esteem versus narcissism and creating that sort of fear of success, or is that sort of
I'm not familiar with the literature on fear of success, but there certainly is a body of literature out there, and I imagine it's probably correlated with some of those things. I would hesitate to say that it's probably not highly correlated with those things, but there's probably an element in there. Motivation's a very tricky field. It's a very tricky field. It's hard to, we also do it wrong. We try to motivate people with rewards and external motivations, and those things don't tend to be motivating. In fact, sometimes they do the opposite. When internal things are the things that we need to motivate ourselves, much like self-esteem, unfortunately, you can't give people those things. You can't give them a love for, what they do or accomplishments. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I put this up here. This is a great book. If you're interested in the literature on this, this is Twenge and Campbell they lead the field in narcissism research, and they wrote a book called The Narcissism Epidemic. It's not that old, but it's already outdated. But it's not really outdated because the research since then just supports what they said. And it's a great read if you want to read it. Yes?
Hello. Just a comment and then a question. So the comment is, I think that the reason
Make sure that your question's a question.
Right. Well, I think the reason why they say that bullies don't like themselves so much, it's kind of like whenever somebody says that you have a homophobe, he's actually gay.
Yes, I do think there's a point to that. I think that it's much easier to swallow the idea that somebody is just broken, that they've just been hurt by somebody else, than it is to think that somebody's just not a nice person.
And the question is, so I went to a panel discussing women in science, and I guess my question is, how do you take that drive behind toddlers and tiaras and turn it into a world-class scientist?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I think the first thing that you do is you don't judge young girls, and you don't teach them to judge themselves based on their appearance. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Very, very bright on the lights.
Yeah,
by the way.
it is.
I'm a little. I don't know if I'm being just photosensitive or something, but I'm kind of light. Anyway, my view on bullying. Well, my view.
Make sure that your question's a question.
No, it's a question.
Okay.
I'm just trying to phrase this in my head properly so it comes out of my mouth in the right way. My view on bullying has always been that, say, like the schoolyard bully, maybe his father or something was abusive. Mm-hmm. He doesn't feel like he can take it out on his dad because the repercussion would be too great. So he takes it out on somebody else.
Yeah, I wouldn't toss that idea out. I don't think that that's unrealistic. I think that there may be some redirection of anger, but the truth of the matter is that that can't account for most of it, because the research shows that narcissists tend to become more aggressive in the face of criticism, but they become aggressive at the people who they think criticize them and not at other people. So they don't tend to redirect. The examples that I showed of the single person shooters, a lot of that is, some of that is directed, and some of that is a matter of they just think the world owes them. So they're mad at the world, and they're thinking they're going to be famous and all of that. So it's a little bit of, there's also an element of dispassionate, when you're highly narcissistic and very self-focused, it becomes very difficult to empathize with others and to care about others. And so if you don't really have regard for others, they're just casualties in getting what you want, which might be fame or whatever.
I see. The question was more like, if there's all this bullying, then there's probably several different causes, narcissism being one, redirection being another.
Yeah, in
what
psychology,
are
we
the
never
various
talk
causes
about one
that you'll
cause.
see for bullying? That was sort of thing.
I honestly believe that the biggest cause is entitlement attitudes. It's that feeling of superiority, the feeling that you deserve whatever it is that you think you should get, and it's a way to feel powerful. It is a way to feel powerful, and they feel powerful, or they do it because they want to feel powerful, because feeling powerful feels good, not necessarily because they don't feel powerful in general. It's not necessarily a deficit, but hey, it's a reward. You know what I mean? Everything's relative. Yes?
It's a two-part question. The first part of it is, do you feel that narcissism is contagious? And if so, where do you see the entertainment industry's responsibility? Is it a chicken or the egg situation, or what is your thought on that?
It's contagious in the sense that it's a cultural problem. And actually, the first couple of times I talked about narcissism, I talked a lot about our narcissistic culture, and there's plenty of examples out there. I would encourage you to read The Narcissism Epidemic, because there's some hilarity in there that they point out that's cultural. But as far as who's responsible, even the entertainment industry just reflects us. I think we're all responsible. And I have to say this one more time. I think that people are very well-meaning. I think the idea that we all want people to feel good about themselves is a positive idea. It's a good thing. We want people to feel good about themselves. The problem is it's misguided. And our attempts to raise that self-esteem end up pushing people in the wrong direction toward narcissism and rather than self-esteem.
Even it seems like even trained professionals who should know these things, it seems like even they're kind of saying this stuff. So I'm just kind of like, where is it coming from?
It's coming from our culture. It's coming from all of us. It's coming from all of us. We're perpetuating ourselves. I think we've got about a minute and a half, so one or two questions.
I'll be very quick.
Okay.
Is there any way in which a person could be considered to be somewhat narcissist, as in the same way you can be competent in one area and not so competent in another? Is there a way that a person
it's
can
a
be...
continuum.
Okay.
It's definitely a continuum. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is when it's cultural, it shows up everywhere, even in people who aren't highly narcissistic. They're just, people who take lots of selfies of themselves. That's not necessarily narcissism. At vanity, even if you're vain, it's not necessarily narcissism. The key difference is, how do you regard other people in comparison to yourself? And it may be a component of narcissism for some people. It may not be for other people. So it's a complex thing. It's not a simple thing.
So in work life, they could be narcissistic, and in home life...
It's tricky.
Okay.
It's tricky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's tricky. You can be overconfident in one area and not in another. That's not necessarily narcissism. Yes?
Hopefully this is part of, or it's not too far off the field. We're talking about why people are bullying.
Mm-hmm.
As one who spent 5 years under the thumb of several bullies, what can you do about it?
That's a really good question. That's an excellent question. And I think that we have to focus on the victims and empowering the victims. And the best thing that you can do, if you're involved in school bullying programs or anything like that, the best thing that you can do is teach kids to stand up for each other. That seems to do more to reduce bullying than any other tactic we've ever tried. If kids recognize that bullying is not okay and they see it happening, they stand up for other people, whether they're their friends or not. That, I think, is the best thing that you can do. And you also want to make sure that kids do have at least adequate self-esteem so that they're not vulnerable to that. But you'd want to target the kids that you know are being bullied.
How do you
for
get?
that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
How do you get the other kids to stand up for the people that are?
You ask them to. That's what it's a really robust finding in psychology from back in the 50s that the best way to actually motivate people is to ask them specifically to do it and make them responsible for it. And people actually will shock you and surprise you, and they will do incredible things if you just ask them to. It's wonderful.
Okay, thank you.